I was working in this record store on Broadway, and it was next to a store called Tie City, which was a chain of stores in New York that sold just ties. And this limo pulls up, and the door opens up, and James Brown comes out of the limo, and there's these kids standing there. This one kid goes, "James Brown," and he goes, "Stay in school." He just walks right in, walks right into the store.
We're back. I'm doing my DJ voice. DJ Los Angeles, New York, coast to coast.
Coast to coast. Okay, so hi, we're back. And this week we're doing
The T.A.M.I show, the T.A.M.I show, Teenage Music International. But this was going to be the last segment of my arc of performances. That if anybody else had tried to do it, you wouldn't have the movie existing. And in this case, it's James Brown. So I want to ask you: are you ready for the night train? Are you ready for the night train? Are you ready for the night train? And just I assume at this point we'll just roll it. And all I can say is I saw this. This was originally released in theaters. It was a process called Electronovision. They did it with Richard Burton's Hamlet was the first one.
really
Where they would shoot a live performance on, I guess it was videotape before it was really videotape.
right.
And then they'd blow it up or whatever and release it in theaters. And this was one of the few things that they did it with. And I saw it at a theater on 42nd Street in New York. I had heard of James Brown, and I heard people saying, "Oh, if you don't see James Brown, you haven't seen it. You haven't seen anything." And I said, "Okay, fine." And then when he came on the stage, and I want to just throw one other thing in here. If you have a chance to watch this along with the Chadwick Boseman as James Brown movie, which I think is called. I think it's called something. I
can't
blanked out.
remember it either.
It's a James Brown song. Well, anyway. This show was produced by the Rolling Stones, who are the headline act of the show. And James Brown knew that he was something that people hadn't seen, but they'd seen the Rolling Stones before.
Right.
And I got to give Mick Jagger credit for this because he produced this, what we see now, the video. He made sure that it stayed out there. And when I saw it the first time, I thought, okay, James Brown just did something. First of all, it was probably the first time any white kids had seen James Brown.
No, I think Ed Sullivan. He was on Ed Sullivan.
I don't think it was before this. I think this was the thing that really put him on the map in a way that he
Put him on the map, maybe, but
put him on the map in the way that if you pick up a cat by the tail, you learn something you can only learn by picking up a cat by the tail. And with James Brown, it's just such a breathtaking, nonstop performance because the way they have it framed in the movie, in the Chadwick Boseman movie, is the guy comes back and says, "Now, James, I know that we want to have you be the headline act, but the Rolling Stones, they're the reason people came here, so they're going to go on after you." And he says, "The Rolling Stones are going to go on after us?" And he goes, "Yeah, And then he goes out on stage, and they show a couple of clips of him doing some pretty serviceable imitations of James Brown. But if you watch that and then you watch the T.A.M.I show, the show, you see that this is what is. Oh, they're going on after us. Okay, fine. And as I saw it, I've never been much of a Rolling Stones fan. I thought, look at this, like Mick Jagger here. He's like trying to pretend he's James Brown because he's so blown away by what he just saw. Subsequently, one of the times when I watched it, I said, I got that wrong. What Mick Jagger did there was say, okay, we've got to now take the Rolling Stones to a new level. So in a sense, this is the show that gave birth to the Rolling Stones as we know them now.
Yeah.
But there's just nothing that can compare to James Brown, who I think had training as a boxer. There's a move that I've seen, like Jackie Wilson did it too, where you can see that these guys had boxing training because they'll hike up their pants with the heels of their hands, like what you do if you're wearing boxing gloves.
Right.
And you got to get your shorts up. So they're that's just one of many moves. And this guy, I mean, he comes out on stage on one foot, goes across the stage on one foot, and the backup band was his backup group was called the Famous Flames, which were his the three singers, and then he had a band that he would it's not in the movie, but he would find people on stage if they hit a clinker.
Oh, find him every time.
Every time. And there's this one documentary shot of him where you just see like somebody behind him got him, and he just turns his back and he's looking towards the camera and he says, "I got you." And he's like that. I mean, this was a guy who knew he was better than anybody else on the planet doing what he did.
Right.
He was so completely James Brown. And it's just I still will watch that and get chills. I can't keep my mouth shut. I can't sit down when I watch it. And I used to imitate doing those moves. And I remember a couple of years ago being with the group and saying, I was really beginning to feel getting old. And I said, I used to be able to move like James Brown. And then I thought for a second and I said, you know what? I can still move like James Brown, but it looks ludicrous. But with that little guy out there doing things that just defied everything I'd ever seen before, it's the most exciting thing I've ever seen on the screen.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah,
So it doesn't
I
like it as
wasn't
much.
actually sure why I was watching it. It was like I'm watching it, but it's kind of a concert. That's what I'm watching.
Yeah, it's a movie and a concert.
I've like seen a zillion of them. My whole life has been a music concert. So it was kind of like, I certain things. It was done at the Civic, the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium,
Mhm.
right? So that was interesting. And apparently they gave out tickets to all like the high school students. They gave out tickets to come to it. It really was like that in the 60s for the, I mean, I thought they were quite well behaved. I mean, everybody, I literally went to one Beatle concert, and I'm not kidding. I was telling George, I mean, literally people, even me, I was like, what the hell? It was
Couldn't hear the music.
They're just screaming.
Yeah, the minute they
were
started,
just
I saw the
screaming.
Beatles.
It was really like that, that it was like, so yeah, it is James Brown. I thought somebody who was definitely never put it together, influenced by James Brown, was the one that's really popular now, Bruno Mars. Yeah, he kind
Michael
of
Jackson.
Yeah,
was
yeah,
really
but Bruno
influenced by
Mars really reminded me of when he was performing. I was like, I never realized before how Bruno Mars has a lot of James Brown moves and a lot of his, I don't know, his kind of charisma, the
Right.
way that he acts, right? Although James Brown actually was a very like Mick Jagger, extremely ostentatious performers, but very polite, almost shy people, right? That would. It was, yeah. So it's interesting. It was interesting to see the Supremes before Diana Ross and the Supremes. It was just the Supremes. I mean, there's people that you'll be really interested in
Chuck
seeing.
Berry.
Smokey Robinson though, when he was with the Miracles.
Oh yeah, they were
You
great.
know what I mean? It was like that was interesting. Chuck Berry, I've seen it like a zillion times, so I wasn't. But it is actually historically interesting if you are music historian sort of person. Do you know? Then you'll like it. I like I said, I've just seen so many concerts. I'm jaded.
Well, I've seen a zillion concerts because I used to be a
But I
music
always
critic.
worked around them, which is different.
but this one You were what?
We were at the concert.
I worked at the concert.
Yeah, we were at
So
the
it's
Well, I was
kinda
doing it as
different.
work. I was writing about them.
Yeah, well, you were in the audience. I was
Yeah.
behind the scenes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, this one is nobody can talk bad about James Brown.
Yeah.
All my life, I've just adored him. I saw him first. I always heard about him because I used to listen to this station in New York, and it was Chicken Man, Chicken Man. That's all I remember. And they played R&B, and I heard Night Train. That was the song they were playing, and I was trying to think, how did the musicians keep up? it's so fast, and it's heavy emphasis.
One time I went to a James Brown concert and I could not sit down.
I've been to a million James Brown
concerts. It was like
concerts.
the girl in the red shoes.
Yeah.
You know, I just could not
You can't
stop
sit down.
moving.
No, absolutely. Anyway, so he came on Ed Sullivan, and he was at his prime. And he was, I think he did Cold Sweat, and then he ended it with Please, Please Me.
Yeah, he
Or
used
Please,
to always,
Please,
With
he
the
used
cape.
to always
He was
Yeah,
such
Please,
a
Please,
showman.
Yeah.
And I used to think, oh, this guy must be on so many drugs. He never took any drugs. He just, that was him.
Well,
he was just,
well, that's not quite true.
well, oh, right, near the end, yeah. Or what we know. But
No, he got
God bless him,
busted.
he made drugs a good use. He put
Well,
to
I
a
don't
good
know
use.
back then if he did, but
No, he did,
but,
probably didn't need to.
I remember he got in all that trouble.
Oh, right. I forgot.
I was going to say one thing though. I don't think Mick Jagger, those English guys. I thought it was funny that they used, of all people, Jerry and the Pacemakers. It was kind of like, hey, that's Jerry and the Pacemakers.
They
But-
were popular at the time. You know,
Yeah,
it's
I
like-
know, but
for
it was
like-
well. They couldn't be
like-
more opposite to. Maybe that's the
Exactly,
reason
darker.
why they couldn't be more opposite to the Rolling Stones,
Yeah.
right? But I do think that one thing I have read is that like the Beatles, all of them, the British guys were just such huge fans of American
Americana,
R&B. You know, they just admired those people so much and tried to
Emulate them.
emulate
Yeah.
them.
Well, you know who
So-
else was in that show, and they're not in the movie, is the Beach Boys.
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh,
the
yeah,
Beach
they're
Boys,
real close.
They got all tied up in the contractual stuff, and I think it was they didn't want to be up against James Brown. 'cause
Nobody
they knew
should be
that-
up
Well, they
against
were
you.
in the show.
Can
the
I
Beach
finish
Boys were in
what
the
I was
show.
I think they're in the
saying?
TNT show.
No. They were in this movie. The Beach
Yeah.
Boys were in this movie.
They were in this show.
Yeah.
They were a
They
lot
did
in this
like
show.
4 songs or something. In fact, they followed Jan and Dean. Jan and Dean did theirs, and then Jan and Dean sort of did the nod. Okay, here are the real like beach people, and then the Beach Boys came up.
I didn't remember them being
Yeah.
in when
Okay,
I
I'm
saw it
done.
in the
Go
first
ahead,
place.
Lon.
No, I'm sort of like you. I think it's a great concert film to watch, but it's more like history, heritage, or whatever. The most fascinating thing I thought about it for me personally was to actually see an integrated audience. It's so rare to see both black and white performers together.
in
First
California?
of all, well, on TV at that time period, but more
It
importantly,
wasn't on TV. It was.
well, no,
released-
but that's what I'm saying. For me, while I'm watching it on TV, it's like, oh, that's sort of odd because it was a film, like you said.
Yeah.
But then it's like I saw it on TV in the 70s. So, and that's when I was telling Bob, yeah, that was when they made it the T.A.M.I TNT show, where they combined 2 shows.
Yeah.
But they cut. I did not see the whole T.A.M.I show. That was a funny thing. So it was, but in the audience to see that integrated as well was sort of a big surprise for me. And I'm so glad that they actually show that because I thought, give it to the director. I'm sorry, that Steve Binder guy. That was sort of amazing, the fact that I'm seeing an integrated audience, integrated performers. It's like, see,
But actually, it was an integrated group. I doubt if the English, because for me, when you say that, it's like, even in 1964, that was a problem in Los Angeles.
well, no, I was going to say just in the public in general, because like even if you watched, I bet you if you watched American Bandstand at the point,
No,
it was not
it was all
integrated.
white.
Yeah.
you
And then
know?
they had
exactly.
Soul
Yes,
Train.
but this was, you said.
That was Dick Clark.
Right.
That the Rolling Stones was kind of their thing, right? This
Well,
was their
no,
thing?
I'm not talking about the role. I'm not talking about any individual.
I'm
I'm
saying
taking the
is-
people who put together the show, the
Yeah.
people who shot the show, and the people they got to come to the show.
Well, I believe
Yes,
the
yeah.
Rolling Stones produced the show.
Yeah, I doubt
He's
very
talking
much
about
Mm-hmm.
the audience at that time being
but I
all
doubt
white.
Yeah.
that they would go for that.
No, they were all white audiences. It wasn't
No, I mean
until
the Stones.
I-
Well, the
Well,
Sto-
no,
I
very
think-
much so. I agree with you. I'm not saying that like the Stones, because you're right. The Stones actually were the preeminent, even over Beatles, saying, "Oh no, R&B is what helped us more than the Beatles ever did,"
right.
and you can tell it in their music. They have a lot of R&B in
Yeah,
the
but
Rolling
the early
Stones music.
Beatles had a lot of covers too.
No, well, they did,
But they didn't-
But they
they
didn't.
had
They
more
didn't have an
audience.
R&B
Hold on,
sound,
me.
though. They
They
didn't
had-
have an R&B sound. That's what I would
They
say. They
did.
had a pop sound, but they didn't have. I consider like when I hear like for example a great to me like what I call R&B song that the Rolling Stones did is like
Little Red Rooster.
oh, okay, there you go. I was going to
But that's
say a
not an
honky
original.
tonk woman,
Yeah,
you know,
that too.
something like that.
But that's
That
way
is-
later.
But yes, but it is that you could tell that blues, like they said, the blues
That was
really did come into.
But the
Forming
Rolling
them.
Stones, as we know, the Rolling Stones started at that show.
Hmm.
Because if you look at their early career, you know, like they were just they were
They
sort
were
of
the Beatle rivalry.
they
That
were,
was
they were,
how
they were
upset-
Beatle
no, exactly,
rivalries. They
yeah.
were like a little edgier than the Beatles, but they were sort of disappearing off the scene until they came out with the Satanic Majesty Presents. And then
This-
all of a
it's
sudden they
satisfying.
started getting
That's a funny
naughty.
scene. I can't see them being out of the scene because, like I said, they were the
I
headliners.
can't
of
I can't
this.
imagine
Yeah.
it either.
Well, they
I
were
mean, I
they were
was
the
there.
headliners at that point
At the
because
show,
at that
yeah.
point it was in England it was them and the Beatles
Mhm.
and they were they were the
Yeah,
ones
but,
who were here
but
and
then
Mick
again-
and the Rolling Stones did produce the show,
Right. No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. The Rolling Stones actually
so they
produced
got
the show.
James Brown on the show.
Yeah,
So the
they-
thing was, no. But I'm not even considering that. I'm just talking about the fact that it's the Rolling Stones, right? They're producing a show. They're going to have who they want on there. So they had, and that's what I'm saying. Even having somebody like Leslie Gore on it, as well as having Chuck Berry singing Maybelline, and then having Jerry and the Pacemakers come out and sing Maybelline with him.
Yeah.
I mean, even something like that, I thought was sort of like really almost groundbreaking.
That was
to
bizarre,
see.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think it's
I guess
groundbreaking.
I'm
in a way.
Canadian. I don't really see
Yeah,
that.
that's true. We're Canadian.
Well, no,
Yeah,
and that's what
we
I'm
saw
saying.
that
But,
part.
but see, I'm not saying I was there to witness it either. I just know that when I watch stuff from
wasn't there either, I was
television
there.
of that time period, it's very rare to see a
Mixed.
mixed audience.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, literally. I mean, that's why. And like I said, the performers, yes, that was more common. Like I said, Ed Sullivan, he did always put anyone he could on the show.
But
Whereas
they didn't have shots of the audience when Ed Sullivan would do it.
Well, no,
Very-
they did
every,
have,
every
they did
now
have
and
shots,
then,
but that's what
not
I'm
like
saying.
this.
It's not usually the Ed Sullivan show. That was mostly also stayed. It was mostly all a predominantly white audience because
Absolutely.
he was like Mr. Television at that time
Mhm.
period too. Because even we watched it because my mother said, Billy Crystal, I think, said the same thing about having culture. Our mothers want to watch it, not so much to watch what popular music, but you'd see opera, you'd see somebody reciting Shakespeare poetry.
Lord
She always
Clark.
thought, all that kind of stuff. He really did try to make entertainment for everyone.
Yeah.
So that's why when you saw, including foreign performers, etc., right?
Topo
So that's
Gigio.
Exactly.
Oh, jeez, Joe.
Eddie.
But-
And
that's-
the thing too, I remember
Lamb chops.
he used to have scenes from Broadway shows.
Yeah, exactly.
He'd have the cast when the show was running,
Yeah.
and to me it was like, here's a show that's going because they're on Sullivan, so that means they're
going.
losing business. They need stuff in there. But one thing that was interesting is he had this is Ed Sullivan now. He had the cast from West Side Story come on, and when they did, I think it was Cool. Although Cool, I think might have been written later. There was one of the scenes they showed with the Jets, and it was the same choreography that they used in the movie.
Right.
Yeah, because it was all Jerome Robbins,
I wouldn't be surprised. But so I agree with you. Just look at the performers. If you see the perform, I mean, there are some people I don't even know, like Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas.
Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas.
And the Barbarians. These are
Multi.
acts I've never even heard of. period.
Multi, the
Yeah.
drummer for the Barbarians, only had one hand. He was playing with a hook.
Again, don't even know these people.
I
So
didn't
that
know
was
them
like
either.
that was sort of interesting because I thought, wow, and these were put in because I have to admit it was Leslie Gore was like the big surprise to me. It's like,
Oh, Leslie
I mean, I know how popular she was at the
Yeah.
time.
Oh, yeah.
But it's
my
like,
party.
And
Absolutely.
actually,
Right.
she as
Well,
a-
it was kind of a superstar show in
well, that's
its
what
way.
I'm saying. It had like these names, and like she's one of the people who perform multiple songs. A lot of people only perform one or two songs. So
some
that's
of the
thing.
songs they
Yeah.
performed, I'd never heard of.
Oh, okay, yes, exactly.
There was
And
no
then-
B-sides.
But for me, it was to see, like you said, Smokey Robinson, The Miracles was incredible.
Yeah. Oh.
Again, I love Marvin Gaye. So to see him at that time
Marvin
period,
Gaye, yeah.
you're seeing him,
You
I
see
think,
it-
at his best at this
You're
time
seeing
period.
everybody
Yeah.
at their
Well,
best.
no,
Well,
wait.
when
I
they're
mean,
young.
his
I
best
thought it
was
how
what's
young
going on.
James Brown looked.
Well, no. I'm talking about performing. See,
That's
my
where
thing
he
is,
kind
I've
of
seen him
reminded me of,
perform even in the late 60s, and you could tell he's already on the drugs and the alcohol. So it doesn't come off as well,
That's
in my
interesting,
opinion.
okay.
I mean, the last time I saw him perform where I was impressed is when he sang the
Sexual
national
healing?
anthem
Oh, really?
at the Lakers game, if you remember. It was like, quote unquote, the sexiest version of our Spangled Banner you'll ever hear.
Well, meanwhile, we got to get to George here.
And
He
then,
hasn't even-
and then, like I said, it's just so the performance, that's what you would see. I always sort of like that kind of stuff. But the movie as a whole, it's like, I was like you. It's like, oh, it's a concert movie. And I'm not particularly moved by anything, or I thought it was very entertaining for what it was. And like I said, at a historic point in
If
time,
you're- if
that's what I
you're-
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, George. Wake
yeah,
up.
for me, it was more like seeing bands that like a lot of songs I knew the songs, but I didn't know who the bands were and what they looked like. But I thought it was going to be also a documentary, more like we were going to people's lives. But it's a concert. It's a concert show documentary. And it does say that what makes this thing notable is because it's the first televised performance of James Brown in this show. I remember a long time ago watching this thing with with Mick Jagger. It was some interview, and he was talking about some show where he had to go on and James Brown play before them. And he goes, that was a big mistake.
Yeah.
Because he was also dancing. He goes, when he said this guy coming up, he was like, we're screwed. That's what the guy said. So he almost feel like, but he did his show and everything, and the same thing that picked him up. I had no idea what show he's talking about. I think he's talking about this show. What's it?
Well, this
I like
show's
the-
even referenced in a Police song.
So and I like me seeing the Stones, Marvin Gaye, that was great, and the Supremes before they were Diana Ross.
You said this because I was saying, oh, look at the Supremes. No Diana Ross. I didn't say no Diana Ross. I said with before Diana Ross.
Yeah.
Before Diana Ross was Diana Ross and the Supremes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but I'm going, wait a minute, she's
And
right
you
there.
see that she
Well,
looks-
she
looks
wasn't
just
dating
like-
Barry Gordy
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, there you go.
Are you done?
So yes, it's entertaining as a concert.
Okay.
You had your chance.
This is a kind of cool James Brown story. If you notice at the end of his show, he takes his tie off and he wads it up like he's going to throw it to the audience. Okay. Well, he used to throw ties to the audience at the end of his shows.
Got expensive?
And one day I was working in this record store on Broadway, and it was next to a store called Tie City, which was a chain of stores in New York that sold just ties. And this limo pulls up. And the door opens up, and James Brown comes out of the limo, and there's these kids standing there. This one kid goes, James Brown. And he goes, stay in school. And just walks right in, walks right into the store.
Into Tie City? He walked into Tie City?
Yeah.
Oh.
He was loading up on ties for his next show.
Okay,
Rate
so.
it.
Oh, rate it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's an excellent concert. I give it a 10 as far as concerts go. But like I said, it's not a movie.
Well, I give it a 10 because that's how much I love James Brown.
Yeah,
But
I give it a
I
s-
think it's historical. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's something you can watch for 30 years from now.
I gave this a
I
6.
watch it periodically.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
Yes, a concert is a 10. It reminds me of I was thinking of they used to say back in the 80s when everybody hated to have Van Halen open for them back when they got started. Because they would make the headliner look terrible. Same thing if you have James Brown open for you.
It kind of
Yeah, so it's a 10 as a concert.
reminded me of the show Shindig.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Way better than
Hullabaloo, all those shows
yeah,
back
it
then.
was
yeah.
kind of a format of that.
Well,
How
yeah.
about
In fact, it was like I said. I think there's a lot of the Hullabaloo dancers were the dancers on that movie.
I'm like,
Was,
So-
was
I'm like Russell
Hullabaloo
Peters.
even
Never heard
going
of it.
on at that time? 64?
What's that?
Was
Well, see, it would have been 64.
I don't
Yeah,
think
yes, they
so.
were. Yes, they were.
was it?
Lon,
Yeah.
what number do you give it?
I already did.
What was it?
6. And then he rated.
I
So-
give it a 10 if I recall.
Yeah.
Concert.
Since I
Okay.
brought it in, and it's my
Did
baby.
I end it already?
I'm going
No,
with
you
a 10
give it-
on this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So that ends it for this week. We'll be back again next week.
Oui.
Yeah.
No, my favorite
Maybe,
movie's
so to
coming up.
speak.